Okay, quick video here to kind of show you how to take control of some of your FileMaker windows. Sometimes you're going to find situations where you want that window to fall in a very specific place on a screen, and FileMaker actually gives you a lot of options for doing that. I'm using an older version of FileMaker. Yours may look different, but these functions are still going to be there. I like to use the older version because A, that's what I have available to me on this particular computer, and I like to show the compatibility in older versions, and uh, I like to kind of stay with things that you can do on most of the versions of FileMaker. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to create a script, and this script is going to be something we can run anytime we want in order to basically resize this window. So I'm going to open up my script workspace here, and I've got a script created. It's blank right now, but it's basically called resize window. So what the first thing that I want this thing to do is I want this thing to resize my window to the right width and height. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is use a function in here where you can just say move resize window. There it is. So what you can do is within that you can select this move resize option here. Okay, and I'm going to give it, it's kind of backwards. Typically things will list out a width first, but they list out height first, so just kind of keep that in mind. I'm just going to start out with like 600 by 800 and see what that gives me, because these are in points. So if I click OK and I save my script and go to my application and run that, then when I resize it, you'll see what it does is it resizes it to that particular dimension. So if I have it out here and I run this window, it resizes it down to here. And if this works for me and this is what I want, great. I'm actually going to give it a little bit more, maybe a little bit more on the height. So I'm just going to go back over here to my height, change this to like 650. Okay, I'll save that and I'll run it. And voila, it gives me kind of what I'm looking for. So even if a user were to open up a window and do something different, I could always reset it the next time that I run this script and get it set back for them. This is very handy when you are jumping between screens and some of your screens have less content and you want it to minimize. It's also really great for login screens. If you want to minimize out or minimize down to just the bare minimum and then expand to a bigger screen, you can get some dramatic effects with this. So you could take a script like this and have it resize this window, and then on another screen, whenever they leave this login window, have it resized to larger. So we're also going to use this move functionality here. So let's just say that in this example, I don't want to just resize it, but I want this window to open basically in the center of the screen. Okay, we can do that fairly easily within FileMaker by using the move portion of this function. So if we go into this function, I could simply specify the number of points from the left and the top. To illustrate that, I'm just going to do 100. And then I'll save this script and I'll run it. So if the script were sitting here and I were to run this script, it jumps up to where it's 100 pixels down and 100 pixels over from the left and the top. That may be the kind of thing that you want. You may want that to happen. You may want certain windows to open like this and other windows to open up at different parts of the screen. So you have a lot of control here, but what if I wanted this to open up right in the center? That's fairly easy to do as well. What you've got to do is you've got to use, instead of an actual hard value here, what you're going to want to do is enter in a calculation by clicking on the specify button. So for the distance from the left, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my calculation, and I'm going to scroll down here to this area where we have an item called get screen width. Let's see, I think I already passed it. There it is, get screen width. Now this function is kind of dynamic in the sense that it will look at the computer that the user is on, figure out what the screen width is of that computer, and return that value. You don't ever see that value returned unless you were to populate it into a field. But just know that it's running out, talking to the computer, and getting the entire screen width in a numerical value. Now, if I were to put divide by 2, then all of a sudden it's going to give me half of the width of the screen, which would be the exact center. So that would be a way to get this dialog to the center. Now, I also need to account for the size of this window because I want the left edge to be off center and the right edge to be off center to where the middle of this window is in the center. So if I set this, I remember that I set this width to 800. So that means the middle of that little dialog, that little window within FileMaker is 400. Then what I can do is subtract 400 from this. So let's just say that my screen width is 1,000, just making a number up here. Then it's going to divide that by 2 and I would have 500. And then it's going to subtract, and 500 is where it would try to put the left edge. Okay, and then I'm going to subtract 400 from that. Those numbers don't really make sense because this screen is definitely much wider than that, but you'll see what happens here. So we click OK, and I'm just going to save my script and let me run that. And what it did is it moved it to the center minus half of this size. So it figured out that this right here is the place that I want to be. And I can do that same functionality on the height by choosing this one item called Get Screen Height. I divide that by 2 and then subtract half of my height. Well, my height is 650, so I'm going to do 325. I do that. I'll save my script, and this is what I end up with. If a user moves this over and I run this script, it throws it right back into the middle of the screen. Okay. If they were to move it over and then resize this window, and I wanted to reset this and just give the, at a certain time in the application, resize everything and reset everything, I could do that just by running that script again, and it resizes and situates the screen in a very specific part of the user screen. The only word of caution I will give you on this is you need to consider the size of the screen your users will be using. If you have control over that and say all your users are using the exact same display and they're all going to have the exact same pixels to work with, then that's not really a problem. But if some users are going to be using, a much smaller monitor with smaller pixel count, you could very easily resize this window into a size that is so large that it doesn't fit on their window anymore. So if you have considerations like that, you want to make sure you don't go too large on your windows. But that gives you a quick way, just within a script that you could run at any time. This is a very simple script. I can, of course, nest this within other scripts, but it's a great thing to have on startup, for instance. But that's just a quick way to take control of your screens. You could decide maybe you want it to always open up right there. Maybe you always want it to open up right there and a secondary window opening up right here. You could certainly accomplish that using these functions. So nice little way to take control of your screens, the resizing of those screens, as well as the placement on the user screen.